I'll do this slightly since we're in close quarters. Call the meeting to order.
Yeah, that's good.
This is the Village of Riverside Board of Trustee regular meeting for Thursday, May 15th. Time is about 7:05. We're meeting tonight in the Parks and Recreation conference room because there's no power in Township Hall. So I apologize for any inconvenience it might be for the folks here. We're kind of in close quarters. But we'll still get our work done, and we have a lot of things ahead of us tonight. So I would ask you to please call the roll.
President Self.
Here.
Trustee Pollak.
Here.
Trustee Sussman.
Here.
Trustee Valerie.
Here.
Trustee Collins.
Here.
Trustee Foley.
Here.
Village Manager Scalera.
Here.
Also present Village Clerk Bailey. Not with us this evening are village attorneys Molina and Mars.
Well, we don't have a flag, so we'll pretend. So if you'll please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You're always welcome to speak at our meetings at any time you'd like. We do have a special place at the start of the agenda for public comment, but if you would also like to wait till later in the agenda when a particular item comes up, you're welcome to speak at that time as well. I just ask that you be recognized by the president and make your comments tonight from this microphone so that we can make sure everything is recorded for the folks watching later at home. And my thanks too to Channel 6 for rallying to get over here. And we're not being broadcast live tonight, but they have a very fast turnaround, so this will be on TV tomorrow on our YouTube station. So first up is public comment. Would anyone like to address the board? Mr. Gallegos.
Alex Gallego, Street 234, South Harlem. Good evening, Mr. President, trustees, those in attendance, and to those watching at home. Sorry, I come before you, the village board, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to make this real simple. Summer will be here, ready or not. I know it seemed like a long way away, but we survived the winter of vortexes, and we have a lot of things to look forward to. We have the art fair coming on this Sunday. We have a cruise night, which will happen on Thursday, June 12th on Burlington from 6 to 9 p.m. We have the steak fry, June 20th, which will be on Friday. I know it's posted on some posters on the 27th. That's incorrect. It's really on the 20th. Choo Choo will now be open for lunch. Tuesday through Saturday, 11:30 to 2. Dinner from Monday through Friday, 5 to 9, and Friday and Saturday, 5 to 10. Pool will be open in 9 days. Got a lot of things going on. So it's summer. Enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gallegos. Anyone else? Mr. Select?
Tom Sisolak, Riverside resident. I'd like to invite everybody to our annual Memorial Day program, which is in about a week and a half. This year will be on May 26th, Monday at 10 a.m., Guthrie Park, if the weather cooperates. Otherwise, we'll be indoors at the Methodist Church, and there will also be parking available behind Hauser Junior High School. And if the event is at Guthrie Park, we're going to have the section by the train station closed, so that can be used for elder parking or veteran parking, handicap parking. This is the 6th year of the new Educational Family Memorial Day program, and the philosophy is to honor the 54 Riverside soldiers who were killed in action during World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, most of whom were Riverside Brookfield High School students. Many also dropped out of high school to join, especially for World War II, also to teach the children that the true meaning of Memorial Day, that it's not just a vacation day from school. This year we're going to honor Riverside veteran Gordon C. Hay, was a member of the United States Army Air Corps, B-17 bomber pilot. Did any of you have a chance to know Mr. Gordon C. Hay? He passed away a few years ago, but he grew up in Riverside, attended all of the Riverside schools, and he said goodbye to his high school sweetheart, Colleen, left here at the Riverside train station to go to flight training. And if you maybe remember some of your World War II history, the United States had 12 B-17 bombers, stationed at Hickam Air Base in Pearl Harbor, and they were all destroyed, along with almost the entire United States Navy, on December 7th, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. The new B-17 bomber was then designed, constructed. It had 10 .50 caliber machine guns. It also carried 17,000 pounds of bombs and had a crew of 10 men. Gordon C. Hay was one of the pilots. When the first plane was displayed in Seattle, one of the reporters mentioned that it looked like a flying fortress, and that's where that famous nickname came from. The design itself was intended to defend itself with all of the 10 machine guns on board, but unfortunately the plane itself was so large, it flew straight and steady, so it was an easy target. And the actual statistics by the United States Army Air Corps, they calculated that during World War II, a B-17 bomber and its crew would be impossible to survive 25 missions. Most of them were shot down before that length of service. You might also remember the famous Memphis Belle B-17 bomber that was highlighted during World War II. And the United States military stated that if they successfully came home from their 25th mission, that they were then going to return to the United States, help raise U.S. war bonds for the war effort, and also help instruct new B-17 bomber crewmen. They did survive, and there's an outstanding film if you'd like to look at that perhaps. If you go to YouTube, look up Memphis Belle. It's an actual color film produced by the United States Air Corps. In February of 1944, the B-17 bombing mission that was designed to destroy the Nazi aircraft factories, the United States actually flew 3,500 missions in a matter of 2 weeks, and there were 244 B-17s that were shot down during that 2-week period. A month later, in March 1944, the B-17 missions were directed to destroy the city of Berlin. We lost 69 B-17 bombers at that time. Gordon C. Hay, who grew up here in Riverside, actually flew successfully with his crew 27 B-17 missions. He returned home in September 1945, and he married his sweetheart, Colleen. They raised 3 beautiful, energetic daughters. Meredith Hay, you might remember, sadly passed away a few years ago. She's the lady that started the Stars and Stripes organization, which sent thousands and thousands of packages to soldiers throughout the world for about a 10 or 15 year period. Lauren Hay Cody lives in Riverside. Their other daughter, Pam, lives in Milwaukee. Gordon Hay's wife, Colleen, still lives in Riverside, and she'll be there on Memorial Day, along with her daughters and a lot of grandchildren, so I'd like to invite everybody to attend so we can honor another very outstanding, courageous man from Riverside as a B-17 pilot. Any questions on Memorial Day? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Good evening. My name is Aberdeen Marsh Osga. I live at 150 Nuttall Road. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Olmsted Society to share some of the wonderful things that our volunteers are doing in the community this year. For the landscape, we provided equipment and trained volunteer assistants for prescribed burns with the forester and public works to clear invasive buckthorn at 3 locations along the river. We have ordered sedges and grasses for future planting in one of those cleared areas along Riverside Road. In our work days thus far, over 200 volunteer hours were spent clearing invasives and mulching at 2 different sites, and more is needed. Our next work day is Saturday, May 31st at Swan Pond. We've had 3 great public lectures in cooperation with the library, with more on the horizon. and are in the midst of our Reflections on Riverside Student Poetry Contest and looking forward to walking tour season with our first scheduled for Sunday, May 25th. Now, none of these things would be possible without the support of our members and those who support our every other year fundraiser, the House Walk. This year's House Walk, Sustainability Then and Now, which you may have seen our posters around town, takes place Sunday, May 1st, or June 1st, that is, and is exciting on very many different levels. You get to visit 9 Riverside homes from the Victorian age to modern green build, 6 of which are opening their interiors, to survey how concepts of sustainability have changed over time. You'll learn about materials and design, preservation, the relocation and reuse of a World's Fair structure. You'll learn about solar, a brand new first of its kind in Riverside geothermal system, water retention and reuse, LEED standards, energy efficient products, rain gardens, victory gardens, and the list goes on. This is all within a 2-mile walkable area. Though we are happy to announce that Continental Nissan will be providing free shuttle service via the zero-emission electric Leaf for our House Walk attendees. And for our cyclist friends out there, deeply discounted tandem and Italian bike rental is available with advance reservation. Our Green Transportation, Will Call, and Sustainability Fair will open at the Water Tower at 11:30 on June 1st. But you save $5 by buying those tickets in advance and save $10 if you're a current Olmsted Society member. Tickets can be purchased online at olmstedsociety.org and in person at the library, Aunt Diana's, and at Visit Oak Park. We are so grateful to everyone who is opening their home, sharing their homes, their projects, and their experiences in what we believe will be one of Riverside's most educational and empowering home walks. Sustainability Then and Now, Sunday, June 1st.
Thank you, Aberdeen. And thank you to Floss for all the contributions that you make to the village. Appreciate it. Would you like to say a word about this weekend? No.
Oh, this weekend?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. In case it's possible that somebody in the room doesn't know about the arts fair. And in case it's absolutely possible somebody hasn't volunteered who would like to volunteer, the Riverside Arts Weekend is on Saturday and Sunday, all day, both days. We have juried art and music and food and hat-making activities and a fashion show on Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So please bring your families, your friends, and come and enjoy. Thank you. And volunteer if you still have time over the weekend.
Thank you, Jean. Anyone else like to address the board? Okay, moving on then, we'll move on to reports of village officers. And first up is the village president's report, and I have a very happy duty tonight. I have before me a proclamation of thanks for Dr. Ted Smith, who is here tonight with his wife, Susan Shipper Smith. I can't seem to see a way to get around to you, so I will read it from here and then we'll pass it along to you. Dr. Ted Smith. Whereas Dr. Ted Smith exemplifies the best of what it means to be a volunteer and resident of the village of Riverside. And whereas Dr. Ted Smith has been a long-term member and contributor to the Riverside Preservation Commission. And whereas Dr. Ted Smith also was a long-term member and contributor to the Riverside Landscape Advisory Commission. And whereas Dr. Ted Smith was president and board member of the Frederick Law Olmsted Society and played General Winfield Scott, I'm told, to much acclaim. And whereas Dr. Ted Smith helped maintain the nature path behind Indian Gardens for many years with his handcrafted benches. And whereas Dr. Ted Smith has contributed valuable resources to the Riverside Historical Museum and has generally given countless hours to furthering the landscape and preservation of our historic village. And whereas Dr. Ted Smith's knowledge of the village of Riverside, generosity of spirit, and sense of humor have helped make the village of Riverside a wonderful community in which to live. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the members of the Riverside Board of Trustees, do hereby express to Dr. Ted Smith our sincere appreciation for his outstanding contributions to the quality of life in the village of Riverside. Rick, would you like to say something?
There was a president of the United States who once had such a flowery proclamation written about him, and he said, "I wish my parents had been here. My father would have been proud, and my mother would have believed it." But I just want to say that I just think I'm one of many that deserve this sort of honor, and I think that you should give some thought to the future to recognizing people like John Kohler, John Cooka, Dorothy Schroeder, Tony Pecalunas, Osgood and Marsh, here we are, Maya Moran and others who have contributed partly because they found this such a wonderful village to live in, as I have. Thank you.
There's a bit of a receiving line here for you, Ted. Oh. Yes, in back of you, all around you.
It's your fan club.
A well-deserved fan club. Next up, we have a little business here to attend to. I have motions to appoint the following individuals to the Safe Environment Commission. Mr. Michael DiNatale for a term to expire June 1, 2017. Deborah Garman a term to expire June 1, 2017, and Sarah Campbell for a term to expire June 1, 2016. So I'd ask for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Sussman, second by Ms. Collins. Any discussion? Ask you to please call the roll.
Trustee Pollak.
Yes.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins. Aye. Trustee Foley.
Aye.
The motion carries, and we're fortunate to have Mr. DiNatale here this evening to be sworn in, and Ms. Garman and Ms. Campbell will be sworn in at a later date by our village clerk. So how do you want to handle this, Kathy? Just have him come to you since you've got your lap full of laptop? Okay. Mr. DiNatale?
Need at the microphone. Repeat after me. I, Michael DiNatale, do solemnly swear
I, Michael DiNatale, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
of the Office of Safe Environment Commissioner
of the Office of Safe Environment Commissioner
for the Village of Riverside, Illinois,
for the Village of Riverside, Illinois,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate your service. Next up is the village manager's report.
Okay, I have two items. The first is I'd like to introduce our new Community Development Director, Sonia Apt. Sonia joins us from the Village of Bartlett, where she served as the village planner. This is her first week here, and she's already immersed herself in a number of projects that have been ongoing and will be going on into the future. So I had asked Sonia to attend the meeting tonight so that I can introduce her to the board as well as to the general public. And she is available if you have any questions, or Sonia, if you wanted to maybe step up to the microphone, say a little bit about yourself to the board.
Well, it's nice to meet all of you. I'm really honored to be able to work for the Village of Riverside and look forward to working together with you in whatever it is that you need for me to do. And, I have about 14 years of planning experience, so I hope to be able to use that wealth of knowledge to kind of help you guys achieve the goals that you've set for your town. So look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you very much.
And then the second item is a bit of praise to our finance director, Jessica Francis, who's in the audience. Jessica, through a lot of the initiatives that she has brought forward, and with the board's willingness to implement those suggestions, The village was recently notified by Standard & Poor's that our bond rating has been upticked to AAA, which is a pretty good feat on the part of our finance department and solely on the shoulders of Jessica Francis. So I wanted to publicly thank her and acknowledge her and her staff's effort to get us to this point. So thank you, Jessica. And that is all I have.
She likes it when we do what she tells us to do.
Yes.
When we do as we're told.
And when we do as we're told, see what happens, good things happen. Next up is the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone needs to have removed for discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve. Motion by Mr. Foley, second by Mr. Ballerine. Please call the roll.
Trustee Tomlin.
Yes.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up are reports of departments and commissions. And the aforementioned Ms. Francis is going to present to us the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended December 31, 2013.
The village contracted with Lauterbach and Amon back in 2012 to handle the comprehensive annual financial report and the audit for the village of Riverside from 2012 through 2016. This is our second year with Lauterbach and Amon. Jamie Wilkie, partner of Lauterbach and Amon, is here, and she'll present the financials and address any questions that the board may have this evening.
Thank you. So I apparently don't have to sing your praises because that came prior to this, but for the board's acknowledgement, absolutely no issues with management during the audit process. Jessica and her staff fully cooperate. We have no reportable issues to bring forth to the board, so thank you for all of your hard work. It certainly makes our job much easier. I will go through a couple of items in the large bound document, so if you want to pull that out, I will give some page number references. The village did receive what we call the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. That was for the prior fiscal year report, so December of 2012. You'll see a copy of the award provided in the introductory section of the audit. That is a third-party review of the financial statements, so an independent review. They go through about a 2-inch thick checklist on an annual basis, provide any recommendations for implementation, and certainly something that's very highly looked upon by the bond rating agencies. So they are absolutely using that information as they go through their rating process. After the introductory section on pages 1 and 2 of the report, you'll see that's provided on our letterhead and provides the audit opinion itself. The bottom of page 1 has a paragraph labeled Opinions. The village did receive what we call an unmodified opinion. That is the highest we are able to give. It means the financial statements are free of any material misstatement. You will not see the word unmodified in that paragraph because we like to trick people. That's what us accountants do. But in there you'll see that the financial statements are presented materially correct. And that reference indicates that highest level of opinion that you can receive. Immediately after that, you'll see a divider page labeled Management's Discussion and Analysis. You'll see 15 pages of information provided here that is prepared by Jessica, reviewed by us for the accuracy of the numbers. I really consider this to be the executive summary to the audit, so if you haven't had a chance to read those 15 pages, I would encourage you to do so. Jessica did a really nice job this year of highlighting some of the key changes for the year, including revenue trends, expense trends, long-term debt activity, capital asset activity. So I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time there. Pages 10 and 11 of the report after that MD&A section, so if we flip back after that section, it'll have actual pages 10 and 11 at the bottom. Pages 10 and 11 provide the income statements for your major governmental funds. The very last line will highlight the ending fund balances for the year. So you'll see the general fund, the debt service fund, capital projects, non-major, which are our smaller kind of special levy funds, and then our total column there. So you'll see total fund balances, we're just over $9.3 million ending for the year, an increase of just over $23,000 for the year. Any specific questions on the numbers? I wasn't going to go into too much detail on those. The last section I want to point out is actually the very last section provided within the report, and that will begin on page 82, I believe. This section is known as the statistical section. It provides 10-year trend information, both financial data as well as non-financial data. I would encourage the board to spend a little bit of time in the statistical section. I think it gives a nice historical context to what you will read in Jessica's management discussion and analysis. So you'll find information on there on the property tax base, demographic information, principal employers, full-time employees, operating indicators, all kinds of useful information. And this is one of the big sections that the rating agencies take a look at as they go through their rating analysis. Any specific questions on the audit process? Any of the numbers or disclosures?
You've made it so clear
Thank
we
you.
don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica.
So I'd ask for a motion to accept the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended December 31, 2013.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Sussman, second by Mr. Foley. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Trustee Collins.
Yes.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Motion carries.
Oh, you want to skip? You could do that.
Yeah, with the trustees' permission, why don't we skip over to the ordinances and resolutions, because Ms. Francis is here for one of those as well, and then we can have our discussion about the concrete. Is that okay? Okay, so we will move to the ordinances and resolutions section. First up is an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of Amendments 1 and 2 to the intergovernmental agreement between the Illinois Office of the Comptroller and the Village of Riverside regarding access to the Comptroller's local debt recovery program. Did you want to present this?
Introduction.
Okay.
On December 16 of 2011, the state of Illinois enacted Public Act 97-632, which established the local debt recovery program that is now facilitated by the Illinois Office of the Comptroller. Basically, any local government within the state of Illinois may participate in this program. However, the entity must first approve an intergovernmental agreement. On May 21st of 2012, the village board approved an ordinance authorizing the execution of an IGA between the Village of Riverside and the Illinois Office of the Comptroller. The act states that if an individual is entitled to an income tax return from the state of Illinois but has an outstanding debt with a local government, the state controller may deduct payments that are due to that entity from that return. The Village of Riverside has provided files on an ongoing basis of outstanding debts to the Comptroller's office, who uses this file to match those that were owed a tax return from the state and had an outstanding debt to the village. During April of 2014, the village received approximately $28,000 in outstanding tickets that were resolved as part of the local debt recovery program. However, payments in future tax seasons will be significantly less, as many of the outstanding collections, approximately 25%, were paid during 2014. What you have before you are two amendments to the IGA that staff recommends approval for.
So I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Collins, second by Ms. Sussman. Any comments or discussion? Please call the roll.
Trustee Collins.
Yes.
Trustee Sussman. Aye. Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is a resolution authorizing the execution of a real estate contract and rider between the Village of Riverside and Vintage 2 LLC for 454 Northgate Court.
Okay. In 2000, the 454 North Gate property was decommissioned as a pumping station when the village converted its water distribution system from a gravity force system to a pump system. Following an appraisal of the property in 2008 of $700,000, the village board listed the property for sale. The village soon after received an offer for the property. However, since the parties could not reach an agreement on a final price, discussions were terminated. Also in 2008, the real estate market took a downturn and the village did not receive any subsequent offers. The property has remained on the market but was removed from the MLS listing in early 2010. In October of 2011, the village requested an updated appraisal for the property. The appraisal that it received valued the property at $370,000. In April of 2014, the village received an offer for the parcel from Vintage 2 LLC. The village board discussed the offer and agreed to accept the attached contract and rider. The board agreed that the village would benefit from the development of the long unused and surplus property. The advantages to selling the parcel include the return of the property to the real estate tax roll as a tax-producing parcel, removal of the property from the village's inventory of property that has to be maintained and insured at the village's cost, and promotion of the development of residentially zoned land within new single-family within a residential zoning district. Before you is the contract, and the rider and staff recommends adoption of the resolution authorizing the execution of the said contract and rider between the Village of Riverside and Vintage 2 LLC.
I ask for a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Foley.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballerini. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to point out that staff and many of the trustees have spent a lot of time looking at this. This agreement was not reached at all in haste, as you can tell from what the village manager read. We have background sounds for this. This has been a process that's been going on for a long time. There was a lot of due diligence on our part. I want to thank particularly Trustee Foley and Trustee Hamilton, who have spent a lot of time and, given their backgrounds, had great input on this. And I just want to say that I think it's a very good step for the village to take, and I strongly approve of the sale.
Any further discussion? No? Please call the roll.
Trustee Powell.
Yes.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Gallery.
Aye.
Trustee Collins.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
The motion carries. We will now go backwards a little bit to our discussion. What we're going to be talking about this evening is the existing requirement for the use of exposed aggregate concrete as an approved finish for the sidewalks and driveway aprons. And this has been something that's been talked about off and on for a while now, so we're going to see if we can reach some kind of consensus tonight as to whether we want to maintain the exposed aggregate or whether we're interested in going to broom finished. Mr. Bailey, did you just want to give us kind of an overview of the differences in the cost to get us started?
Just for some comparison purposes, we can go back to the capital budget, this year's capital budget for sidewalk replacement. $100,000 was budgeted. We've committed $15,000 to the sidewalk inspection. And I have planned to commit $70,000 for sidewalk replacement this year. And at $8 per square foot, which is what the sidewalk inspection firm used as an estimate for replacement of sidewalk of exposed aggregate, for $70,000, we would replace 350 squares. I used a figure of $5 per square foot for broom finish concrete. This joint purchasing group that we have been working with over the last several years had a bid price of $5.25 last year. For broom finish concrete at $5 a square foot would equate to about 560 squares. So there's roughly 200 squares difference in those two prices. From my perspective, I don't think there's any real differences. It's concrete. I personally like exposed aggregate from an aesthetic standpoint. Blends nicely with the environment, but the numbers are what they are. It's certainly more expensive, and it's decidedly more expensive to use exposed aggregate concrete. This joint purchasing group is advertising today for this year's project, and like I say, I've committed $70,000 to for sidewalk replacement this year, and that bid opening is scheduled for May 27th. And if I don't know that you could change anything without changing the ordinance, but if you were to decide that you wanted to go to broom finished concrete and that could be done, we could have the bid document amended to include broom finished concrete for this year. From that standpoint, I view it as a policy matter for the village board as far as what type of material you use. Certainly the village sidewalks now are a patchwork of different types of concrete that were installed over the years. It will take many, many decades for any uniformity to be achieved, whether or not the village board decides to stay with exposed aggregate or switches to some other material. So there's, nothing's going to dramatically change as far as the appearance of the village goes, I think, because hopefully we get like 50 years of life out of a sidewalk, if everything goes well. So I think it comes down to cost and then whatever consideration the board might have.
What about in terms of the differences in maintenance and longevity between the two types?
I don't, I haven't noticed any significant deterioration of either types of concrete. The most significant issue with exposed aggregate is actually the process of exposing the aggregate, and that's what really reflects the cost primarily. There's also 3/8 inch aggregate that's used versus more standard aggregate for the broom finished. I don't really see that there's any significant difference in the two types of concrete. The exposed aggregate I've seen seems to be holding up well.
Any other questions, Mr.
Is there any difference between the two as far as, I can't think of the word, but is it slick? Does the aggregate make it less slippery, give it more traction or anything?
I think it's just the opposite. We went through this discussion a year or two ago, and one of the aspects of exposed aggregate that was identified is it provides less traction because there's less surface area than broom finished concrete. I think that context, the discussion of that was within the context of driveway aprons primarily. Another issue that I don't think weighs heavily on this matter, but from an ADA perspective, one condition that should be avoided is rough, uneven surfaces. To my knowledge, the village has not received a complaint associated with exposed aggregate. It's obviously less smooth than broom finished concrete, but that's the only other consideration I'm aware of.
Can I just follow up on your question, please? So in the case of the potential slipperiness of the exposed aggregate, it's not, if I understood what you said, it's not really about sidewalks, it's about the slope on the apron?
Well, it's more about in winter driving, and if you're driving up, driving on an incline and there's snow or ice or something like that on your driveway apron, you have less traction.
So it's the apron, it's the slope,
Yeah,
not the flat sidewalk.
Yes.
Yeah. And then in the case of the ADA concern, aggregate concrete is approved by the state still, right?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any.
So it's not an issue, really?
No, not that I'm aware of. I would never pretend to be an expert on ADA issues, but rough, uneven surface is one example would be where a sidewalk surface is spalled. Pieces are actually popping off. That's a good example of rough, uneven surface. And that occurs, actually where I've seen that mostly is with broom finished concrete, just around the village. and it's hard to tell what might have caused that. It could be something associated with the quality of the concrete that was poured at the time. But you know, any concrete will deteriorate if there's some defect in that process, I think.
You know, another thing that I've heard people ask about is the whiteness, the brightness of the broom finished versus the more muted aspect of the exposed aggregate. Is there a way to use the broom finish that doesn't have that stark kind of white color?
That can be achieved. It's my understanding that the bright, stark white finish on these concrete is really a curing agent that's used. That can be used, defeated with linseed oil, for example, can be used to seal the concrete, which leaves a much duller appearance.
Is there a cost issue? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Not that I really am aware of. I haven't worked with that particular type of concrete much. We tend to use that, and we don't do too much of it, but in more recent years when we replaced curb and gutter, that's one of the things we've stipulated. There can be no curing agent that results in that bright white finish, and it has to be sealed with linseed oil.
In about 6 to 8 months, concrete tends to dull down a little bit. Does this quote include any fiber mesh in the material?
No,
fiber mesh. Is any other village using the fiber mesh in their broom?
Not that I know of. We're using, municipalities tend to use IDOT specifications for a lot of different processes, whether it's crack sealing on the streets or whatever, and we would use that for our concrete. You know, covers many different aspects of the process. You know, the preparation for the laying of concrete and so on and so forth. We did, maybe anecdotally, when we replaced the underground storage tank cap last year, we did use fiber mesh concrete in that, and quite substantial steel mesh also. We made a really, really strong cover there. But this is fairly straightforward concrete that I'm, you know, expecting we would use.
I think by going to the broom finish, and if we allow the residents to do their aprons, which I think we should, because going to an exposed aggregate for your apron is an expense that the homeowner has to incur, and it's relatively high. By going to a broom finish concrete, there's more consistency in the material that's coming from most of the yards. I think you find a big inconsistency with exposed aggregate because every yard uses a different kind of aggregate in there. Some use a Swanee stone, some use some other sort of river stone, but they all use a different sort of stone in their aggregate mix. So that's why you'll see around town different, just like you can with broom concrete, you'll see even more with exposed aggregate, the different colors of stone, like in the Central Business District versus some of the newer sidewalk squares over in this area. So I think if you're looking for consistency in product, going to a broom finish is a little bit better. And you can get away from the stark whiteness of it.
Further comments?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I think I wandered around the village looking, and even in a couple of comments where broom finish stark white was put in a couple of years ago, it's still pretty stark. And there's inconsistency in, as you said, in the broom finish as well. And I understand, I appreciate what you said about the visual effects of it. I would just like to comment that it's really more than just a cost, what we're looking at, what we should be looking at. I certainly understand that sidewalk squares are a problem in town, and that we've never really given Public Works enough money to adequately take care of it. But I would just like to comment that there's a huge visual effect in certain parts of town, particularly if you go from exposed aggregate to the broom finish, and in areas you might not think of as important. And I didn't actually mean that the way it sounded, so I'll start with something such as even looking on Long Common, as you come down Long Common to Riverside Road. Part of the visual effect of standing in Guthrie and looking across the street is the exposed aggregate. This has this feel of more of a mottled look, of sort of an older look. If you go to Scottswood Common and you stand and you look west, so if you look on down Ben where you live, it's exposed aggregate. It's this lovely textured, sort of pebbly underneath the trees look. And certainly if you look down Scottswood, it's the same look. And I think that it would have a dramatic effect to go to something else. On the sidewalk part, I'm not talking about the driveways, because I agree with you on the aprons, Trustee Foley. And in an area that was surprising, if you go to Harlem, Harlem is almost entirely exposed aggregate. And Harlem is an area that I think we probably don't give enough attention to in this village. We've changed the zoning in that area. We've changed the zoning on coming in from Harlem West on Burlington and streets like that. But I think if you go and you stand at Long Common Road and look south, you'll see that it's exposed aggregate. And what we're talking about, as we've learned recently, it's every 50 years or so we're replacing a square. So if we move to something that's a broomed concrete in some of these areas, you're going to be dramatically changing the look, and you're going to be dramatically changing the look for 50 years on something like First Division or in the CBD. I don't mean the CBD on Burlington, because I would assume we're going to be following the grant, which is the
pavers.
The pavers, thank you. But if you look at Long Common Road, if you look at Riverside Road, it's exposed aggregate. So maybe there are now a couple of squares that are broom finished, but I particularly don't support unilaterally going that way. I think that in a village where we have talked more in the last couple of years about beauty, and in fact have a president of the board who talks about beauty a lot, and actually Public Works Director as well, I think that it would be, I think that we have to be very careful in saying, well, we can get a little over a third more squares if we switch to a different kind of concrete. I think it would be a visual mistake in many areas of the village, and I can't unilaterally support it. I understand that we're up against a deadline right now, but I think it would be, seriously, if you stand on Harlem, if you go to Guthrie, if you go to Scottswood and look, it's exposed aggregate. That's what you see. Now, as I said, I think that changing the code such that we're not requiring exposed aggregate on the apron is probably an appropriate way to do it, and maybe putting in a comment about trying to speaking with the company to make sure it's not this glaring white. But that's how I feel about exposed aggregate. It's beauty, President sells. I can borrow from our president here.
It's actually 60% more that we get.
60% more.
So that's my problem with it is a big difference in price.
And it'll be a huge difference visually too.
But would you rather have a broken sidewalk square or a square that looks a little different? That's what I wrestle with. I would rather, I'm not sure yet, but I think that I would rather have a square that somebody's not going to trip over than be more worried about the color. If it was a third, I would not, but the 60% difference to me is a huge difference in number of squares that can be done. So I wrestle with that.
We're talking.
Can you get closer?
We're talking about 300 squares in 2014. Am I correct? Is that the number you said?
350 at $8 a square foot. I will say that over the last 4 years, the average square foot price for exposed aggregate is about $7.50. So, but still, around 300, 350 squares for exposed aggregate for $70,000.
And how many for brush concrete?
At $5 a square foot, 560 squares.
So we're talking about a couple hundred squares.
Roughly, yep.
I think and I agree with what you're saying. When you look at, we have $1.5 million worth of squares we need to replace. I agree 100% with what you're saying. And on the other hand, I also agree a lot with what
But not 100%.
What? No,
93.5.
93. I agree with
60%.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, but what I really like to see is, and I think Trustee Pollack said this last week, and I think we're moving this very quickly. I don't think it's important for us to make this decision in 2014 for 250 squares. And I think this is something that we really need to get our residents to weigh in on. Some of them may never weigh in on it.
And if we don't hear anything, nobody weighs in on it, nothing comes about, then we visit this in 2000, we visit this next year. But I think for 260 squares, I just don't feel good about having my head, my back against the wall this fast to do that, just because of what Trustee Sussman said, and because I don't think our residents haven't had an opportunity.
I'd like to point out, maybe the board was confused. What we've told the contractor is that we will expend $70,000 in our sidewalk program. We have costs for both, so really, your back is not up against the wall because we didn't tell the contractor we're going to do this or that. We're kind of waiting to see. I think we were going to try and get a general feel from the board on what direction you were going to go, but I think the board is going to be still not decisive, and so I think I would agree with you, for this year, we move forward with the aggregate, and the board and the community, the residents can weigh in on the issue, and then we can begin with whatever material next year.
I agree with Gene. It's a visual thing for you, and it might be for some other people. I think a lot of people in this town sometimes have a problem with stark changes. I think it'll be even more noticeable if we allow the homeowners to revert back to a broomed apron, but then mandate an exposed aggregate sidewalk, and then they have a broomed driveway. So you have that broomed, aggregate broomed look. That too is a little bit stark to look at. And I think that the homeowner, though they shouldn't, it's a public sidewalk, should they have a say in what the sidewalk looks like in front of their home? They're the ones that shovel it, and they're the ones that weed it and edge it and take care of it. I think if the cost was lower too, and we wanted to bring back the Share Square program that never really got off the ground, but whatever. If we were to implement something like that at a lower cost, I think that would spur even more squares to be replaced. If we can get the news out that we have reverted back to this broom finish. I think if you look at some of the old broom finish squares that are in this town, you'll see that back in the day they used a granite dust on the square after it was poured. There was a powdery granite dust that they would throw down on the square, which they still do. And that was troweled in, and it gave it that speckled aggregate look, but it was very old. And when it weathered and it got dark, you'd see some squares in town. They're almost black in color. That was a process that they did long ago that they still do today. So that's an option to look at. So I want to be careful, because I respect your thing about the visual impact, is that you've got this new apron, aggregate sidewalk, and then the homeowner wants to put in a new broom finished driveway. There'll be that difference in material.
We already have many places with that difference. We have driveways that are paver bricks. We have driveways that are white. We have.
I don't think there's a tremendous amount of paver brick.
Yeah, but there are still differences. Yeah.
But I don't, I think that there are ways to work with a broomed finish look, but I gotta think at the end of the day, we're gonna be able to accomplish our goal of replacing more squares if we go that route.
And that's one of our goals.
And that's what I wanna do, is reduce the liability hazard that we have in front of us. We saw the study and saw how many squares are really, really in bad shape. I mean, tomorrow, if you had to replace X amount, could it be over 1,000 squares that need to come out tomorrow?
Sure.
Yeah.
The inspection report had several thousand defective squares.
Then we're able to get to that goal a little bit quicker by going with broom concrete and reduce the liability for us.
I just think it's too soon to make that decision. I think, for instance, Harlem doesn't have aprons.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
I think it would be, and I would like to see what the pavers are going to look like on Burlington before we decide what to do on Long Common and Riverside Road, for instance.
I think it's a public walk.
But I hear what you're saying, Mike, about
I would like to see some of the aprons in town get replaced too. And I think that the cost, if it was reduced to a broom concrete, would spur the homeowner to replace some of the shoddy aprons that are in town as well, which is something that we don't mandate and we don't count like we do the sidewalk squares. There's quite a bit of aprons. And the steepness of some of them with disposed aggregate, it's kind of hard.
Well, I have no problem addressing that right away. The aprons.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and I said that I was in favor of changing the aprons, but I'm not quite certain it's what you're saying is entirely accurate, because this policy of mandating the exposed aggregate for aprons has only been in place for a couple of years.
Right.
And we've had terrible driveways. We have driveways where people have still not, we've had an ordinance in place now for how many years that people are not, with certain exceptions, not supposed to have pebbled driveways or broken driveways or broken aprons. And this policy of exposed aggregate for the aprons is maybe 5 years old, and these terrible, terrible aprons and driveways long predate that aggregate. So
And because people look at the cost of exposed
well,
aggregate.
they just don't want to do it. It's been
Well-
around, some of these aprons have been deteriorating for 20 years. I don't think,
Yeah, but it's an unfair, I think it's an unfair tax on our residents.
yeah,
think
I agree with that. It's the sidewalks that I have
Whether
the
they replace
issue
them or
with.
not, that's their business, but it's an unfair tax.
But
that we
how do
levied on our
people
residents.
feel about, and maybe it's even too soon to do that, mandating something about color so that it's not that brighter? I mean, I know it gets tricky.
When you get into colored concrete, let's say you wanted a green patio, then you run into huge consistency problems because the concrete is colored by load. The trucks you see running down the road hold 8 yards of concrete, and those are mixed at the yard. You could have 4 concrete trucks all going down the road with green concrete, and they're all slightly different.
That's okay. The driveways are not right next to each other for the most part.
Understood.
So that's that's not like having one sidewalk next to another sidewalk. To your point, Mike, that there are ways perhaps of toning it down. And I don't know, I know we don't have architecture reviews, or we don't mandate that all houses have to be purple and pink in town. And we've had this conversation many times, and we don't want to do that. But the intent of not having glaring white driveways, I think, is a good intent.
And that's why I asked Ed about the fiber mesh, because fiber mesh is a product that is basically, in essence, it's like hair, but it's made of fiberglass. And it's strands, and it's mixed into the concrete in the truck. When the truck shows up to pour its concrete, the driver pours a bag of this hair material in it, and it's mixed. But it does 2 things. It strengthens the heck out of the sidewalk, and it does dull down the color. Now, you'll hear 1 bag all the way up to 6 bags, and that's the most they can put in one load. If you do a 1 bag mix, which really, in the scheme of things, you get a lot of squares out of a 1 bag mix, it does dull down the concrete considerably. When I'm working with it and I have clients that want a toned down concrete, we just add more fiber to it. And it actually strengthening it and dulling it down. But it does add a little more cost.
And I'm not certain we're ready to mandate something like that tonight.
Right.
So I would, maybe Joey could wait and ask staff or ask Mike to work on, 1 or 2 more months isn't going to make that much of a difference, to work on, although it'd be good to get it done this summer, to work on some kind of wording along, not having it like, pre-whitened teeth or that kind of.
What made us go to exposed aggregate?
It was the
look?
color. It was the look and the
It was the
color. If
look.
I remember correctly, it
Okay.
had to do with the look. And I agree, Joe, I think we used the word tax.
So it was an aesthetic
It was
decision.
really the aesthetics of standing on Downing and looking down Downing and all of a sudden seeing a glaring white aggregate, or glaring white apron.
Concrete.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotta pick on your street for a change.
That, you pick on Solomon,
Pollock, did you-
whatever.
Yeah.
How much do these bags cost?
I would be in favor of maintaining the exposed aggregate for public sidewalks and allowing brushed concrete for aprons.
And it sounds to me like that's the consensus for tonight, right? We will change the policy about the aprons, but at this point, keep the exposed aggregate. Is that what I'm hearing? And look into it more?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to come back and look at it. I would like to look at other products that are less expensive than aggregate, that are concrete-based material, that are decorative, I guess. If the granite dust can be used, we've chosen an aesthetic material that's costly. It's an uneven surface. It's hard to shovel. It's very slippery. It's uncomfortable to walk in bare feet. You know, I just think that there's other options out there. And some would say the problem's gotten far away from us. I really don't think so. I mean, I don't know what is the ratio of aggregate versus broom concrete. Did they inventory every single square in town?
No, but they did acknowledge that we do have a patchwork sidewalk system. And we recognize that given the life expectancy of concrete, achieving any consistency will be decades in the making. So, you know, the company also recognized the cost difference, like everybody does.
And you gave us two options, but they were equally expensive. They were the same expense virtually as the aggregate concrete. You gave us two other options in your write-up.
Well, that was from 2 years ago.
2 years ago. But there wasn't much of a cost difference.
Right.
So maybe there's something else out there, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, there's all sorts of product out there.
So it just sounds like we're not ready at this point.
That does sound.
We can even get a cute little Riverside logo to stand in the corner of every.
Oh, please, let's do that. The first thing that'll crack.
Okay, all right. So, do you have, staff has what it needs, please? So I think the consensus is we would like to have an ordinance allowing the broom finish for the aprons, and then we'll do further research on other materials.
But I would like him to also look at whether there's a way of indicating that it shouldn't be this brilliant fake white teeth looking, no, the white concrete, the brilliant concrete. And maybe you have a way of wording it where it's not onerous for the resident.
Tone down.
Tone down. Is that an official word?
Typically, if I may, typically you'll see in a code for aprons a very specific standard. So many inches of subbase, so many and an exact mix of concrete. And so I think that's what we need. So everyone is
It could be as simple
the
as
same.
saying using linseed oil as a sealer rather than.
Or avoiding, these are not, these other curing agents are not acceptable, that type of stuff.
Oh, sure.
So you can work that.
They're industry standards, I think, for a lot of that material.
That's the other thing is that we have to take into consideration that residents do use rock salt on their own sidewalks. So, they're throwing a salt down on the squares that we just poured. So I think that the salt is a little harsher on the aggregate because it's exposed. And the salt's able to get in between the aggregate and the concrete. So that's another reason.
Okay, that it? All righty. Anyone in the audience like to comment on this before we move on? Mr. Spadney?
Donald Spadney, 111 Woodside. I'd like to comment about concrete, but it's, I'm slipping in here. First of all, we had, the reason they did that was because Olmsted wanted that, and we had macadam streets, and they were sunken, and we didn't have these ugly curbs that got stuck everywhere, right? So it's creeped up and it's changed. He said, people will build ugly houses, but we'll have big setbacks so you can hide them, right? That was the founding of Riverside on stolen property from David Gage. Anyway, I would just like to mention about concrete, and that is we should either sandbag those areas in the river wall now, because another 8 or 10 inches and the water's going to come in up where the old little dam used to be. It's almost there now. Of course, the park is flooded, and it flooded through the pipe. And it's going to be bad again, and we're certain to get a storm, and I don't know what the progress is. I actually came to ask a question, is there any progress on what we're going to do in the Swan Pond? But failing that, I would volunteer to come, and we could get some of you wonderful guys here that are a lot younger than me, right? And we could all come down there for one morning and with Ed's bucket loader, and we could sandbag those. There's only 30 feet or 35 feet of it. We got to raise it like 18 inches, and we could keep the floods out, because it's going to flood at 6.5 feet. It'll go into the park, and then it's out again for months. And the other thing that should have been done is to pick up the stones that are laying out there, because now the grass is growing and you can't see them, and you can't run the mower out there. Because if we run the mower, it's going to tear the blades off of it. They're big pieces of blacktop and stone and stuff. That didn't get done. And it should have been done before the grass grew. I don't know what the remedy for that is. I mean, we'd have to have these guys with the scythe out there, And so what'll happen is the grass is going to be allowed to grow because you can't run the mowers in it, and we'll have it this high. Predict in July the corn will be as high as an elephant's eye. So I think we ought to get proactive and save this river wall, because if we get another flood, and we'll surely get one, then it's going to tear out another 10 feet or 20 feet every time, because the stuff's all loose. It's just sitting there. The concrete, that's how I snuck in here, was concrete, it's all crap. It's all sitting loose on top. I could pick it up and throw it at you. This is the stuff the Army Corps did. So this is what you get when you ask for something for nothing, right? So that's what we got, something for nothing. We got a ruined park for nothing. And now we got to fix it. And I was here a month ago, and I asked, what's the hell's the progress on fixing the park? It's a question. Anybody got an answer?
Mr. Bailey, did you want to give an update?
Well, admittedly, the Swan Pond Park repair has not been a priority for my department. There's no doubt that there's significant amounts of work that needs to be done. We still have wood debris to pick up. We know that there is still some stone or rock in the field area. I'm well aware of the wall issue. We have erosion areas to replace. We have that's on the upstream side, and we have the significant erosion on the downstream side. We simply have other things that we're doing. I can shift priorities. Some of that stuff I can, not do other things, but it's a significant amount of work there, and I'm trying to get other stuff done, get geared up for the summer, and it's a matter of prioritization. Quite frankly, that's really what it is for me. It's not like I don't think about it every day or anything like that. Well aware of it. I have a contact with a contractor for repair of that wall where the pieces are displaced. And so we could contract for repair of that. But like I say, for me, it's a matter of priorities and manpower, and we're just gearing up with our summer help right now, and can't do it all. Can
I finish? I didn't mean to imply that the village should fix this. The village should not fix this. The village, you should get professional people. You got Anderson. He fixed the stairs and the wall a few years back. It's done correctly. Not beautifully, but correctly. The village has no business fixing this. They don't have the expertise. They don't know how to do it. You don't have skilled people. You can build this with unskilled people. You can do stonework, but you must have absolute expert supervision. Somebody who's there all the time, every stone, when it goes down. I worked for Frank Lloyd Wright, and you used to turn the little screws so they were all horizontal in the board and battens. There's detail to stuff, and detail is also structural. And this stuff that they did is, these people ought to be shot when they come over the border from the Army Corps. They just ruined this place. And you got to tear a lot out that they did to refix it correctly, or it's always going to be weak. We will have this thing recur again and again and again. Now we're in May. If this thing floods, that'll take June out before that park is usable, so then you'll be to July, then it'll be the next weather event. This is going to go on and on and on. Basically, that park is ruined right now. And if we don't have competent, outside, professional people repair it, kiss it off. And I got to say, the people who voted for doing this are the people who are responsible, whoever that fits. We let these people in here do this crap, and now look what we've got. And I and some others tried to tell you that this stuff won't work. You can't have a pipe connecting two bodies of water. The water will seek its own level. They know that in the third grade. And I hear the train, and I want to just mention one other thing. There was a big report yesterday about the danger of all these tank cars coming through here. It was really interesting that they're running all this oil from South Dakota in these tank cars down these tracks, and the things do not have, they're in the old cars. So, and it's gone up like 50% or 150% over what it was a couple of years back. So we may want to ask some questions of the railroad, what they're running through this town. Because I don't know if you've seen these accidents where these things go off and the ends collapse. But boy, I was thinking about the arcade building. So, you know, it's just something to be aware of. But please, let's at least go down there and sandbag these low spaces and keep the water out. I mean, get it back to the level where it was. I mean, you know, come on, a couple guys, we could do this, get a bucket loader and 2 guys from, you know, in the morning we could do it, right? And that would save a major flood event in the park. And if it goes to 7, 8 feet, well, nobody can save it, right? But we need to fix this thing, because every time that thing does, it'll wash out another piece of wall. The erosion will get worse. More trees will be damaged. It's going to continue and continue. And unless and their department should definitely not be involved in that. I mean, not doing that, because they don't have the people to do it. You know, they got to cut grass for people that want white sidewalks, right? Okay. All right. Please, let's do it.
Anything else? We have no new business.
Well, I have one thing I'd like to bring up.
Oh, sure, please.
I've had a number of residents contact me over the last several days, sparked by, you know, some of this rash of daytime burglaries, and then the ice pick wielding guy and all kinds of stuff. But, you know, the idea that we have too many entrances to this village, especially from Harlem Avenue, has come up. And the thought of cul-de-sacing some of these entrances and exits. I actually emailed the police chief. I didn't know if he was going to be here tonight to discuss it, how it works in some other villages, if he had any firsthand knowledge. He did say that he has some knowledge about cul-de-sacs in Oak Park, that they're both total round cul-de-sacs and one-way only. They have been very successful in Oak Park and been very well received by the residents. You know, I would like us to decide if this is something we'd like our staff to look at. You know, I can think of one street, Robinson Court. I mean, I don't think there's any reason why traffic comes down along Harrington. I mean, if we would have had, you know, how it comes through to Harrington, you know, just think if that street was closed 15 years ago, you know, when that car missed that turn and went through the ball fields. That might not happen. But you know, there's a number of places that I think this could be a very good idea and very successful. You know, we'd like to, you know, we'd obviously like to make sure that the residents that are in that area, you know, understand what they're getting into. That there's no safety issues with our police, fire. So obviously, we'd want to have our police chief and fire department on board. But I think it's something that we should task our department heads with coming back with some sort of idea. And I think now's the perfect time.
I'd like to follow up on that. I completely agree. And I would do that and put cameras at the remaining intersections. And I think we could begin to address some of these weekly emails we seem to be getting about cars and crime and et cetera.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we actually just, since this, I mean, under new business, you really can't take action, technically. So why don't we put this on our next agenda? When is Chief Weitzel going to be back by then? Do you know?
Yeah, his son is receiving an award this evening.
And we can talk about it more officially, and then we can make a recommendation if you decide to, for staff. Is that all right? Okay. All right, hearing nothing further, we do have an executive session this evening to consider the employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees. No final action will be taken during our executive session. We will not reconvene. So with that in mind, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Foley,
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballerine. Please call the roll.
Trustee Collins.
Yes.
Trustee Sussman. Aye. Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Collins. Aye. Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.